Partnerships occur when both share a passion for improving, for growing in harmony. Speak from the heart and respect the other. A feeling of being comfortable, of being open, that creates the true partnership, which ensures the greatest success. Together, invest in remarkable Indonesia.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight I'm talking with one of Indonesia's most experienced businessmen and a leading accounting professional with over 40 years of professional experience dealing with complex business issues, covering all the sectors of the Indonesian economy. Good evening, sir. Indonesia advertises itself heavily for foreigners to invest in remarkable Indonesia. Do the legal and government capacities indicate that remarkable is necessarily a positive term in this sense?
Good evening, sir, and thank you for this opportunity. Indonesia do indeed offer remarkable opportunities in many industry sectors, but I think the short answer to your question is it can be very remarkable in some sectors and it can be remarkably horrible in other sectors. So, for instance, some sectors is very complicated in terms of legal and government regulations. These include the oil and gas, plantation and mining, infrastructure, and basically many matters where continuous dealing with the government is required. In these sectors, you'll be dealing with both the central government and the local government, wherever your activities take place. Some local governments are more sophisticated and friendly, some others are exactly the opposite. So that is the basic answer. It depends on the industry sector you are operating in. To give some other examples, small retail, very unfriendly and not remarkable. Financial sector, such as banking, finance, insurance, securities, is very heavily regulated with a heavy preference on local management. So it can be remarkable if you can withstand the pressure, and it can be not very remarkable if you cannot accept those pressures. So again, the remarkableness will strongly depend on what industry sector and in which area of Indonesia you intend to operate.
When you say which area, are you referring to geographic area or business sector?
Both.
Okay, understood. And the different levels of government, of different competencies. I know there's a special autonomous regions. Governments have had a lot of responsibilities pushed out from central Jakarta. Does that present opportunities and obstacles depending on the capacity of the 50-odd provincial governments?
Yes. A very simple example is some local government have put a ban on alcohol retail. So if you operate a resort in one of these areas and you are prohibited even from selling beer, I don't think I need to explain further.
Not to an Australian, sir.
Right.
So the government sector, the resource sector, public infrastructure, for instance, are they lucrative sectors for international investors to conduct business whilst meeting their home laws? I mean that in terms of international business ethics.
That will strongly depend on the home country of the investor and also depend very strongly on which infrastructure part you are participating in. Some infrastructure are very heavily controlled. For instance, even the pricing of the services or goods you sell will be very heavily controlled by the government. Some others not. So it depends.
Understood. So the private sector, is it easy to navigate? With whom should business be conducted with? And is it the often tenuous local partner? Is that often the problem? Is that a sustainable model and a safe bet? Or is it something that's fraught with danger?
If there is a clear understanding on the private sector with your partner, and when I say a clear understanding, it is a really transparent understanding on what they expect from you and what you expect from them, that is good. The problem is it rarely ever happens.
So it's a theory.
Yes, it's a theory because it is an inherent problem of Indonesians that
Yes.
they are very polite. Most of them will never give you a negative news. So you ask them, can you do this for us? And they say, yes, of course. But when the time comes, they may not deliver. Another example, you ask them, are you happy with 5 years period before earning profit? And they say, yeah, sure, we invest in the long term. And after 3 years, they start screaming at you because the business is draining cash. So it's very important to get your understandings right and your communication correct. Now, it will be very good if you can find a good consultant to guide you through this jungle, because a good consultant will be able to tell you the reputation of your partner, kind of a background search and their business habits. That will be very enlightening. Of course, you need to find a consultant who behaves like an American and does not behave like those normal Indonesians, giving you just the good news without the bad part. That is one thing. Now, the other thing is, bear in mind that most Indonesian companies are still being run by the founder or their offsprings. So you are not dealing with a company, you are dealing with people. And people are open to changes of attitude, changes of mood, and so on and so forth. So that is something else that you have to pay attention to. Most Indonesians also do not like to think about investing for 10 years because of the constant changes in the country. So no matter what they say, they will think of a 3 to 5 years horizon at the
Yes.
most.
Yes.
Anybody who tells you differently, take it with a grain of salt.
So what's a safer, commercially viable model for foreigners investing in Indonesia? Your above point was clearly make sure that you use consultants that understand both ends. One, the cultural limitations in Indonesia. Two, the business ethics and the commercial returns of Western companies, but can pitch it in Western linguistic terms. But would you recommend companies investing in the public sector or the private sector have a smoother path? I guess in short, what's more commercially viable in the private sector? Is it using a partnering model, or because that forces you down the government path? Is that complex? Or are you better off choosing a private sector that allows you to invest easily and gives you agility in who you select as partners, or whether you indeed don't use or need partners but can use private consultants and operate in your own name? A long-winded question. Would you like me to rephrase that?
As long as you are not required by the government to have a local partner, you may take your time, or if you are very sure of your expertise in the business outside of the local knowledge, you can start on your own. And when you start on your own, with the business going on, you can know more about your potential partners and you can choose wisely. It's like you don't marry the first girl you meet. You have
Yes.
to go steady with maybe a number of girls and then decide. So that is the gist. And some sectors, absolutely, you will need some local knowledge. But in most cases, this local knowledge you can obtain from professionals, which
Yes.
in the first stage may be quite expensive, but in the long run, it's better than being tied down to a partner that's going to bother you for the rest of your life.
Understood. And if we look at the latest, the big business news coming out of Indonesia in the last couple of months has been, I forget, sir, was the Max Power meltdown? How much money would have been lost there through poor selection of partnering?
Yeah. The other way is if you have a partner, in any case, whenever you get a partner, make sure that you have a way out. It's kind of getting married, but with a prenuptial. So you know what your cost will be if you have to divorce the partner.
Understood. So, sir, in summary, let's imagine you're giving a quick brief, closeout brief to someone entering the public sector. What would you say in 100 words or less, a minute or less?
Be very careful on who your partner is and be very careful of all the regulation surrounding your business. Very short example, you think toll road is a great business. Bear in mind that the toll rates are in rupiah and changes in the toll rates most probably needs approval from the parliament.
Yes.
And when you want to increase your rates, getting the approval from the parliament is a totally different story.
And what about the private sector? A quick closeout for those entering the private sector. What would you advise in a generic sense as opposed to a sector-specific sense?
Watch out for your partner for the private sector. That's the most important part. Just watch out who your partner is. Get a really good background information, not only on their business habits, but you also need to know how their offsprings behave. You may be dealing with a 60-year-old founder who in 10 years' time will give the reins to his son. And his son or his daughter may be a totally different creature because they grew up in the US and studied in the US. So the style may be very different.
And the understanding at the local level may be...
Maybe much less.
Yes, maybe much less, a chasm too big to fill.
Right.
So like everything in Indonesia, I've got a lot of insightful input and intakes from you tonight, but of course it's raised another 1,000 questions like my previous 20 years in the country has. If it's good with you, I might like to consolidate some of those questions and perhaps we could do another session in a week or two from now. In the next couple of weeks, I'm heading to Singapore, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Houston, New Orleans, and Toronto. So I think some of those questions might be relevant as I travel there to do some business seminars. So thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for your forthright and insightful comments. And may your God go with you, whichever God that may be.
You're very welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure as always.
It's my pleasure too. Good night.
Good night.